Hi, my name is Sean Mabry. I'm a fantasy writer, and today I wanted to talk about a question that comes up a lot, usually not as a question actually, usually as a statement, but something that comes up a lot in the realm of fantasy writing, which is this idea of magic systems and magic rules. And there's certainly something to be said for a very robust and very strict magic system in a given fantasy story. I think a lot of the best fantasy stories, not all the best, but a lot of the best, have their quality because of the fact that they set up these very rigid and strict rules for how the magic works, and then it uses those rules to do things that are unexpected. Some character will find a loophole in the magic, or will use a magic rule correctly, but do it in a way that none of the other characters think is appropriate or even possible. And that's all fun. That's great. I mean, certainly that's a huge part of the fantasy genre. But does magic need to have rules in fantasy fiction? I don't think that's a strict yes. In fact, I am fascinated by the idea of magic without rules, where it's not so much a set of strict, almost binary states. Almost, in a funny way, a lot of fantasy works kind of treat magic almost as a form of programming. But what if it's not that? What if it's actually very fluid? What if it has more to do with the intentions and the energy and the hopes and fears and dreams of the user than some arbitrary set of constraints? Now, obviously, there's an enormous risk in that of creating a magic system that just doesn't feel real, where it just feels like events are happening at random. And, you could make the story about that. And actually, there are plenty of stories I love that have that quality, where they're actually like, hey, the magic doesn't make sense, but that's the point. How would people react to magic that doesn't make sense? But I think in between these extremes of, extremely rule-based magic and, hey, it's all confusing, that's the point, I think there's room for something that is a little more like intuition, actually. And again, part of why I say all this is that these are things that are coming up in my novel, and which is the first part of a trilogy. And it's a topic I'm interested in exploring, is like, what does magic look like when it's not so much about rules, and it's not completely random, but it's somewhere in between. And by extension, what kind of metaphors does that create for our own lives? If that is what magic looks like, how do we process it as a symbol? How do we interpret it and apply these magic scenarios to our own lives and try to learn something, which I think, is really a part of all reading activity. I think we're always, even when we don't intend to, we're always looking for something we can apply to our own lives, even in the most far-off, fantastical settings. So this is an open question. This is something I'm still working through, and I would be very curious to hear anyone else's input. But if not, thank you for watching. Do feel free to comment or subscribe, share, like, and I will see you next time, talking about who knows what.